And welcoming everyone to this very special edition of the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey, and our very special guest today, Bill Sproule, who's going to be with us for the full hour today. Bill is the Executive Secretary, Treasurer of the EAS Carpenters. And Bill, I wanted to bring you on right out of the box here in the opening segment. And then on the other side of our first break, you and JDoc will get an opportunity to really drill down on some of the details. But big news as we begin 2026, I go back to the press release that I saw that was put out by the Carpenters back in November of 2025. So the tail end of 2025, and then January of 2026, the Philadelphia Inquirer ran a big story. The headline, EAS Carpenters to open new training center and regional council offices at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. JDoc and I are like, wow. I'll let you pick it up from there.
Awesome. Well, good morning, gentlemen, and I hope saying Happy New Year isn't a little bit belated, but I'm going to do it anyway. And like you said, Krausey, we are extremely excited to now be a part of the Navy Yard. We still have a lot of work to do, but we've been on a search for a headquarters. Unfortunately, we've outgrown our location here on Spring Garden Street, where the Carpenters have been for decades. And we really needed to find a new spot. And we were looking for one-stop shopping. And with the commercial real estate being devalued at the end of the pandemic and even through to this day, we knew that there was a lot of bargains out there and unfortunately a lot of empty office buildings. Our pension funds have taken a hit with our real estate asset allocation investments now, where we've lost money. They've been devalued and things have been flat. So it's really nice to pick up a showpiece building like the one that we did. And we are extremely excited about the future. And I'm glad we did not run down the hill and take a look at some of the first properties that we looked at. And we took about 2 years. And we finally found the right one.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Bill, congratulations, number one. I was reading about, well, I couldn't wait for the show. And again, we welcome the Happy New Year sentiments. So I've been obviously putting the interview together. I spent about 3 hours putting everything together. And I got I called the office and I said, listen, can I get some more information? Because I thought I knew something about the new building, just the general stuff. Man, I was reading this morning and the whole dynamic of this show stopped and changed on a dime, because to say it's impressive, but and the property is incredible at the Navy Yard, right? There's so many different directions we're going to go. But the fact of the matter is, this is a legacy. This is a legacy for yourself, for the Carpenters, for the generation, okay, of what's going on. And the building that, and I'm not going to get into anything right now because I can't wait to talk about it. But there's so many amazing things about it. And I just want to congratulate you, and I can't wait to dig down and talk about it for the next hour.
Absolutely. You know, we're starting the process of figuring out where our spaces are going to be there. We've already have some potential tenants that are talking to us about leasing, which I'm not going to talk about, because there are discussions that are underway and they're very confidential. But we're just ecstatic about being part of that community down there. I mean, with the 400 or so residential units that are about to be completed, that whole area down there is under a transformation where you're going to have a work, live, play kind of a situation. And for us to be able to plant our flag right there at the main entrance when you first come in on number 5 Crescent Drive, and the fact that this is unique, we are one of the only folks down there that actually own the property where our building and our parking lots actually sit. There's a lot of the stuff down there is under a specialized lease program that was set up. So we're really, really fortunate to have circled back on this property, figured out how to make it work for our needs. And, I just can't wait to invite you guys to the ribbon cutting, when we get set up in there in the next, it's going to take us 4 to 5 months, to really get it squared away and get things rolling. It's going to be a process.
Bill Sproule joining us here on the Labor and Energy Show. Bill, one last thing for me before I get us into our first break, and then JDoc and you will pick it up on the other side. Bring JDoc, bring the audience into that decision when it was finally made, because as you said, you took time, you processed it, but when it finally came to the point where a decision was going to be made on this incredible property, bring us inside, if you will, for a minute.
Well, we were focusing on a few other properties, and I got to give a shout out to our broker, Shear Properties. They did a phenomenal job working with other brokers in the city and other real estate companies that had buildings that were available. And we looked at stuff up off of Roosevelt Boulevard. We looked at 401 Market. We even looked at stuff downtown, and everything that we looked at had great potential, great value. Bargains are out there, as everybody knows, because of the vacant commercial real estate in most cities throughout the United States. But we just couldn't find the right mix, and of course, $52 million is a lot of money. That's a big expenditure. It's an investment in the future, like you guys said. It's a legacy. But we feel very, very comfortable with this property based on what it cost to build. I believe it was finished in 2014. It was an L.F. Driscoll project, and it was somewhere almost close to $90 million to build that building. LEED Platinum certified, okay, which is, it's basically a modern building. All the systems, everything's modernized. You guys seen it. It's right off of 95 across from, we got views of the Link and Citizens Bank and, all the stadium district down there. And, the biggest component that really set me in the direction where we had to make a decision and really aggressively go after this building was when I realized that we would own the land and there was 900 parking spaces there. Okay, wow. We do not need 900 parking spaces, but we do need some more property because our next endeavor is we are going to build a state-of-the-art training center down there. It's going to take about maybe a year to 14 months to get all the permits and stuff in place, and then the construction cycle could run 12 to 14 months perhaps. But we're planning on building 100 to 125,000 square foot state-of-the-art training center for our apprentices and our journeyman upgrade classes for all the carpenters and our specialty crafts that live and work throughout southeastern Pennsylvania to utilize. So the property just checked all the boxes. Some of the other properties, we would have been trying to find tenants for the next 2 or 3 years to fill out the building and start to actually get some return on our investment, the ROI. In this particular case, we think it's a very desirable location. And I really, truly think that maybe by the end of 2026, we might have that building filled up. Yeah, that's going to be amazing.
The ROI might already be paid for, Bill. Great stuff. Great way to start the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. We're going to pause. We'll take a short commercial break. I promise you it will be short, and we'll get right back on the other side. JDoc and Bill Sproule for the full hour today. It's the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Back in a moment.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show on the Jacob Media Network. We've got an awesome show. We've Bill Sproule, Executive Secretary Treasurer of the EAS Carpenters. And Bill, it's so amazing. Like, so many things go through my mind. And certainly the first thing I want to talk to you about is not doing the Apprentice Training Center and keeping that tailgating lot where we get, because we're all right there to be fantastic. Just talk to everybody, see how it works out. Just kidding, of course. It's funny because, you guys have been a staple on Spring Garden Street for such a long time. One of the biggest trade unions in not only in the city but in the country. How many members do you represent in the area?
Well, in this particular area, I'd have to break it out for you. I'm going to say there's got to be, at least 7,000 to 8,000 carpenters, union carpenters in southeastern PA from our various locals. And then we some of them live over in South Jersey that are members of the local over here on this side. But I do represent around 43,000 members in my territory, which, as I said on the show before, we are 6 states, Eastern Atlantic states. I'm one of 11 regional councils in the United States, and there used to be about 75 regional councils. So, we've been expanding our territories and consolidating, for efficiencies. But there is a lot of carpenters that live in this area, not only carpenters, but dock builders, pile drivers, cabinet makers, millwrights, floor layers, all of our specialty crafts that work on the buildings that we build throughout the region.
And so the reason I asked that question is not because of, I ask that question a lot often because I want the listeners to see the magnitude of what we're talking about. But I'm starting back at the kind of the beginning. There, you got an awesome facility on Spring Garden Street, clearly outgrown that facility with that many members. Okay, we used to be directly across the street. And so my dad, this takes me back to when the ironworkers were right across the street from the carpenters. And literally we had a smaller building and all that. But the real funny thing about it was we didn't own the parking lot. That little parking lot. Now, I know it's the gas workers now, and I think that they own that parking lot now. But we had, I guess 800 ironworkers, right? Trying to go into a union meeting there, and we didn't own the parking lot. Our cars were getting towed for 20 years, right? It was nuts. And still, once my dad made the decision that he was going to bring it on I'll never forget it because I was a kid, when he was like, we're going to propose this, and I remember he said to me, if they don't go for this, I'm quitting. I'm done. And he wasn't joking really in the fact that you want to be first class union, okay? And you have created success at a level and taken things to the next level. And it's so important that you have state of the art. We went to apprentice school up at Krausey, one of our contractors up at State Road. We were at the plumbers, for a long time. It was time for us to do our thing, okay? And and you got to break that to the members, okay? Now, the $52 million conversation that's magnitude of epic proportions. Let's start at that because when you first had this vision, what was the conversation like with the members?
Well, the members, most of the members are ecstatic. Social media has been blowing up, and there is a few members, unfortunately, that think that this was something that was done with the pension funds or something like that, and why this and why not do something for the retirees and everything. And I've had to explain to them that this wasn't done from the pension funds or the annuity funds or the health and welfare fund investments. we did this from the regional council. We're such a large council now with the consolidation. We've been able to do extremely well with our investments, and we've been able to accrue about 5 years of operating reserves. So you figure I have 195 employees in 6 states in the District of Columbia. When we decided that we're sitting on 5 years of reserves to operate the council, and we do investments, we invest the council's money just like we do as trustees with the pension fund and the health and welfare funds. We're fiduciaries, myself, my executive board. So we knew it was time. We needed a place in this region, our headquarters, to be one-stop shopping. And that means not only is my Southeastern PA crew that's housed here in Spring Garden Street, but we're also going to be shutting some things down in Newcastle, Delaware, and selling those buildings. Once the training center is built, we are going to be shutting down Decatur Road and selling those buildings and moving the training operation down to the Navy Yard. And our staff and our fund office staff, as well as some of our tenants that we have now, are all going to occupy the building. So we're looking at, we will be occupying the entire 4th floor. We will also be occupying some of the spaces on the 1st floor, and we are going to take our museum that's right here at Spring Garden Street that has all kinds of really neat artifacts from history since the Carpenters Union started in 1881. And on the 1st level in that grand lobby area of this new building will be our museum. And we're thinking 2,500 to 3,000 square foot. And that'll be open to anybody who comes into the building, and people from the public can come in and just walk through the museum. So, like you said, this is going to be a legacy. It's going to be a showpiece, and it's only just begun. And, I think about it every day and every night about the potential. And I'm just ecstatic that we started our due diligence in November. And, we had to make sure that we checked all the boxes, the environmental studies. We did find out that there was, once we were under contract, there was some other folks that became very interested in the building. Fortunately for us, it was too late for them. And, when I started looking at some of the numbers and how we got this building at a really, really good discount based on the hardships in the real estate industry, I knew it was the right decision. And I feel 100% confident that we made the right decision, we meaning myself and my executive board, to go ahead and move forward with this endeavor.
Okay, so the first thing that I saw was the building was built for 130 million. Was it valued at 130 million at one point? Now, your investment has already doubled, almost tripled at this point. I mean, this is, when I look at that, and that as soon as I saw that, I'm just like jumping up and down. I'm like, just incredible. Okay, also the location. Okay, the Navy Yard's fantastic. I was being a little, facetious when I was talking about the tailgating parties, although not really. But what I'm saying is, you're centrally located to 95 Carter. When you shut that Delaware, building down there, they're going to be right on 95. You are right in the Carter there, and so, talking about the value, okay, and I know you're going to have some tenants and you're going to do all those things, but the reaction from the members when you it don't take much of a rocket scientist to figure out that the building was built for 130 million and you guys purchased it for 52.5. The reaction to that, now, I mean, just incredible.
Oh, it's already gained value on day one, once we signed the contracts, like you said. And listen, we're still going to have 400 or 500 parking spaces, so tailgating's not out of the question. We actually joke around with one of my colleagues who's about to retire in about 2 years, one of my senior staffers, and we told him that we're going to actually put a booth there for him to work on the weekends for special events, and make some revenue that way as well. We just have to hire someone to clean the place up after the Eagles games. But, there's nothing wrong with considering that. We'll just have to have a good insurance policy for that one, I'm sure. But you're absolutely right. We paid $52 million for the building. There was some ancillary costs on top of that. You've got the real estate transfer tax for the city and the real estate transfer tax for the county, which isn't cheap. You're talking another couple $1 million there, JDoc. So, but that didn't scare me because of what you said, in your remarks. We know that the building was built for almost $90 million. It's a beautiful building. We had to warm up to the open layout with all the floor to ceiling glass walls. And, we don't want to do a whole lot of configuring. We don't want to encapsulate the floors and really change the dynamic of the building. The architect that designed this building that just passed away, Frank Gehry, he was very famous in the world of architecture. I think I got his last name right. But this building, I believe it was built, and then GSK had it set up with all workstations and big open areas. And their intent was to have, for every 90 square feet, one employee. And basically right now, we've got folks down there. There's like these tables with 8 workstations where computers, and they're all over the place. So, we're going to be donating some of that stuff to schools and stuff and utilizing some of it maybe in some of our various training centers. But, we're going to set the building up for our needs and then obviously our tenants. But the fact that the 130 that you're mentioning, what happened was a South Korean holding company came in and actually bought the building in 2018 for 137 million, I believe the number was, man. And that was the highest valued real estate transaction per square foot in the history of the city of Philadelphia. And I'm going by memory here. I don't have notes. I'm thinking, I think it was like $623 a square foot or something. That purchase went down in 2018. And we purchased the building for somewhere in around $220 a square foot. So I know right out of the gate, we can't go wrong here. Right. And then, with Spring Garden Street, once we can get everything out of here, we had thought about maybe partnering up with a developer. And, that creates a lot of complexities, though, as a union. And as a nonprofit entity and things, there's a whole lot of legal things. So now we're thinking, we may just sell this property here, just like with the training fund owns the buildings up in the Northeast on Decatur Road. So, I'm going to spend another 35 million to build this school. And that's a pretty good estimate of what it's going to cost. It's going to be a huge industrial shop floor with classrooms and stuff like that, with a very nice aesthetic exterior, so that we don't disrupt. It's not going to look like a Butler building. You're an iron worker. This thing's it's going to be a giant shop basically, but it's going to match the other buildings down there. And I got to give another shout out to Sal Patty and Kate McNamara from PDIC, because we just met those folks after we settled on the deal on December 19th, and they've been nothing but helping guide us, on our next steps and what we need to do down there to conform with the community itself and the Navy Yard. And, it's just so wonderful to work with people like that and just, be new neighbors and, contributing to the whole renaissance of the Philadelphia Navy.
Well, and the message it sends, really, I can tell you that from again on a smaller scale, to say the least. Of course, when we go up to the Ironworkers Hall, how proud we are. I remember when my dad, when we were, and this was I think in the late 80s, I got to remember, but everybody was nervous. All the, like in other words, it was, we're moving. But, some people were nervous about just change in general. Greatest move we ever made. Our state-of-the-art apprentice. It just represents, the future and that generation. Okay, who made that happen, and what you're doing right now, the generations to come. Like it is unprecedented, to say the least. And so when I think about, let's in a sense talk about, when, like I said about our building was obsolete it was a nice building, don't get me wrong, on Spring Garden Street, albeit again we didn't own the parking lot, so which is the most insane thing ever. But talk about, when you realized that, and I'm sure it was several years ago, that you guys have outgrown that. The amount of members you have and the magnitude of the Carpenters Union is huge. Okay. At what point did you realize, okay, it's time for us to obviously take it to the next level and set the pace?
I'm going to say I realized that 7 years ago when I first took over leadership here, only because I'm a 37-year member in the Carpenters. And I think I told you guys I was in Roofers Local 30 for 4 years prior to that. And I got into the Carpenters down the shore. And my first training center, when I got in September of 1989, was like a 6,000 square foot wooden timber old warehouse in Newfield, New Jersey, outside of Vineland. I mean, it wasn't much, but it had a shop floor and everything. Now, the brothers and sisters that came before me that are a little bit older, they were going to a vocational school and just doing classroom stuff. And all their hands-on training was OJT, on the job. Now I was fortunate that in 1990, the leadership that from one of the old regional councils over in New Jersey, the gentleman's name was Tom Ober, that ran that whole area over there. He went ahead and invested in a school in Hamilton, and that's still there to this day. And I was one of the first classes to go to that new school in 1990. And the same thing, like you guys felt as the ironworkers, and I call the Hamilton School like the Waco compound. And that's what I call this building here, because you've been in this building, it's like a submarine, there's all these little rooms and chambers, and, the fund office next door is a little bit more modernized. But we've invested not only this investment, but, I did a $4 million expansion out in central PA at our training center in Duncansville. We spent a few $1 million in Lebanon, PA. We acquired a training center up in Allentown, PA. We have a state-of-the-art, probably $20-25 million training center in Pittsburgh. So, we've been expanding, enhancing these facilities. And, this one's just going to be a showpiece when it's done. Edison, New Jersey is, I don't know if you ever saw that school, but that's another showpiece that's fairly modern. We built that in 2014. At the time, I was the president of the former regional council and the regional manager. So I think once I elevated into the leadership positions, going back to what year was that? 2007 is when I got kicked out of the nest in Atlantic City and sent to Edison, New Jersey, 90 miles north of where I lived at the time, to actually work for the regional council instead of working at the local level. And that's when I realized that, you have to invest in your apprentices, and you have to invest in journeyman upgrade, because that's the lifeline, that's the future, and that's what keeps the organization going. That's what keeps our members fresh, keeps them up with the technology. So our general president, Doug McCarron, once said at a conference, and I think he heard this, it's a quote from an executive from General Electric, and it's been a proven fact that for every dollar an organization spends on training, the return on investment is 8 to 10 to 1. So, you got to bleed a little bit, to make things better for the future. And in this particular case, we're not even bleeding, because by buying this building and, doing some of the work, the preliminary work and stuff like that, our assets haven't depleted. And once the building actually gets revalued and we have tenants in there and it's generating, money to pay back that $52 million, that's going to get done in 6-7 years, man. And then with the training fund, they're going to be a tenant down there. So, it's a very interesting, complex thing. Even though we own probably 25 buildings in 6 states, and we own our training fund owns several buildings throughout that footprint as well. This is so complex that we basically have to set this up. We've actually applied for status, and we're setting up an LLC just for this building and the expansion of the training center, because we do have a couple small tenants in some of our properties, but nothing to the magnitude that's going to be like number 5 Crescent Drive.
And talk about what message it sends to your contractors, because the investment that you're making in the union, okay, and we're going to get into, by the way, the apprentice program and all that in the next segment, but what you're doing is investing in the lifeblood of the, not only the carpenters, but the union community, and that's our apprentice programs. Okay. And talk about what message that sends out to, your signatory contractors. The fact that you're investing in the future workforce development that they're going to benefit from.
Well, that's a real good point. Our partners at our associations here in the region, the GBCA and Ben Connors, I'm sure you've had Ben on the show.
I had Ben on.
Ben's awesome. And then, and Phil Radomski and those folks, I sit on the boards with them folks. And then Katie from IFCA, which is the Interior Systems Contractors. We've always talked about how we need to grow. We need to keep bringing young people in, and unfortunately our industry has become, in carpentry, it's really become where carpenters specialize now. And when I came up, we were taught to go to work for a general contractor, and you could do concrete forms, right on through to putting the door hardware, the panic bars on the fire doors. And, like I said, we represent floor layers and do all kinds of finish work and trim. But now it seems like the companies want specialists, and our members are starting to specialize in the things that they like to do. And there's still a lot of old school members, like myself, that you try to learn how to do almost everything they can and be well versed. That way you have more employment opportunities. But having state-of-the-art training centers that have enough space where we can have training modules and mock-ups for all different categories of what our members do on job sites is been the ultimate goal. And we've been achieving that across the board. And this is really just going to take it to the next level. I mean, just imagine, I may expand the size of the school just to have more welding booths, because of the shortage of welders, and with us, there's certain jurisdictions where we dispatch welders. Obviously, the iron workers do a lot of welding, boiler makers. There's a lot of trades that rely on welders, right? And just think about what's going to be happening in the Navy Yard and with Hanwha down there, and the possibility of maybe a submarine being built there, and a lot more ships than they have the capacity now. I mean, who knows what could happen? I may just decide to make this school a little bit bigger so we can have, I think in Hamilton, we have about 22 welding stations, and up in North Philly, we might have about 20, Northeast Philly. But, we may try to put 30 welding stations in this training center, and who knows, maybe other crafts will want to come and work with us under shared services and have people train there. My mind is always working on, opportunities for our organization, but also to help the union movement and all trades succeed. So,
No question. Everybody wins what a facility, when you're talking about of that magnitude. You're also going to be neighbors with IBEW down there. But before we get into that, let's take a quick break. We got a ton more to talk about with Bill Sproule, Executive Secretary, Treasurer, EAS Carpenters. We're going to have more from the Labor and Energy Show in just a minute.
At Citadel Credit Union, we're all in on growth. Growing our community, growing your financial future, growing what's possible. That's why we created Ultimate Growth Checking, a premium checking account that lets you make smart money moves without lifting a finger. Does your current checking account do that? This one does. See how you could earn a special bonus and get growing at citadelbanking.com/growradio. Citadel, a Newsweek Best Regional Bank and Credit Union. Federally insured by NCUA.
Welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show here on the Jacob Media Network. We're speaking with Bill Sproule, Executive Secretary, Treasurer, EAS Carpenters, and we're talking about the fantastic facility that the Carpenters purchased at the Navy Yard. Just a game changer, and a game changer for labor and the Carpenters Union, but also what an investment in the future. Okay. And we talked a little bit about the contractors and what, and the training facility. And we're going to talk about that now because there's so much coming in to the markets. We're going to get into, by the way, technology and AI, which is data centers, which is a whole new area of technology that I know that the Carpenters are prepping for. But before we do, talk about really, in a sense, the trend now, the IBEW Local 98, a former neighbor of yours on Spring Garden, is also at the Navy Yard. Talk about what that represents for our labor community, and the fact that we are you talk about Union Row up in the Northeast, and man, those facilities are state of the art. And here we go. At the Navy Yard, it takes us to the next level.
Absolutely, JDoc. Marky Lynch and TJ and those guys, it's wonderful to have them as neighbors. We've been working with them on a lot of initiatives and trying to secure a lot of projects jointly with IBEW Local 98, and they're just a great bunch of guys. And I've been down to their facility, and man, they got a really nice spot down there for their headquarters and their training center. And, when we actually first looked at this building, but, we didn't realize the magnitude of the space there and the amount of land. It just didn't click. And we were focusing on that other building that I had mentioned over on Market Street. But, it's a great spot. I think 98 definitely made the right move jumping down there when they did. And, just same as us. I mean, to be part of something that is going to be, the next 30 to 50 years of economic prosperity, well past our lifetimes, just to be a part of that and get in on the front end of it, if you will, maybe not the beginning when things started happening, but, I really see that whole place down there transforming. And, we have a state-of-the-art cafeteria on the first floor that it's really unique. I mean, it has all these different stations, like where they can do soup, they can do pizza, they can do, they can bake stuff. So, we're going to be trying to figure out like which restaurant vendor.
All right. Okay. I'll be there. I'm here to do another radio show with Bill. You just did 4 last week, JDoc.
So if any of the listeners out there that have culinary companies and restaurants and stuff like that, and if you're interested in maybe operating out of our space down there, please get in touch because it is a state-of-the-art kitchen with great equipment. And we do want to get that operational at some point when the training center comes in. Our hope is that whoever our vendor is there would be able to provide some lower cost meals for the apprentices if they wanted to eat there instead of off of a food truck or something. And right now, the availability to go grab lunch down there is a few spots, but it is limited because there's a lot of people working down there. So I think whatever that turns out to be, and whomever decides to come in and perhaps decide, maybe to come in and run a restaurant out of our first floor, it's going to be a wonderful opportunity that's going to gradually turn into a monster. I mean, I can envision at some point, with the 400 units down there for the residential, and there could be more, we may have a restaurant owner keep that open till 9, 10 o'clock at night.
I mean, it's a community being built that like it. And also, let's not forget when you talk about the image of labor and education in general. And this has been a big deal over the last several years. Listen, the education in the public school systems in Philadelphia, there's a lot of CTE programs, career and technical education, where young people who may not be interested in becoming a lawyer, which is what the curriculum in a public school system used to be strictly geared, in that mold. Now, not everybody wants to go to college. Somebody might want to go into the arts, but so many young people are being exposed to the trades. And when you look at the education people are getting, okay, and they look at a facility like the one you guys are building, okay, the image of labor, okay, and earn to learn, okay, and all those things, and what that facility represents is such a big deal, and it's really about being a first class citizen and having opportunities that that we deserve and young people deserve. Let's talk about. I did hear though, how many parking spots are down there?
Right now, there's 900.
Okay, I heard there's like a little sign on two of them: no iron workers or electricians park in this spot.
No, we're not doing that. I did. It might be a little premature, but I do have a vision, and our chief of staff and COO, he wants to kill me every time I bring this up. But I asked the architects to price out maybe a 6 or 8 story parking garage. Now, I don't want to piss the iron workers off too much, but if we do something like that, it is going to be poured in place. So you'll have rod busters, but you're not going to have double T's and 2 lazy gangs.
I can't tell you how many times I worked on Broad Street. I had the ground crew, and I think it was the Shriners parking lot. But listen, I'm sure everybody's got plenty to go around, and everybody's going to be happy.
On that note with the apprentices though, and the kids, I missed my chance to comment on that, right? And I want to round back though. The one thing about, like, you hit the nail on the head. We're like the best kept secret for this generation of young people. And an interesting statistic came out with this last group of college graduates. And my son happens to be one of them. He was a senior at St. Joe's last year, right? Finance major. But because of everything that's going on with technology and AI and the uncertainty in the economy, there's more unemployed college grads than ever right now. I mean, the unemployment rate's in the 4s for the whole country as a whole. But when you look at, 2025 college grads, unfortunately, that unemployment number, JDoc, is like 7.5%, man. That's scary. So families and young individuals are going into debt, to get these degrees. And I'm sure a lot of this stuff can turn into home runs for those individuals. And, but the best kept secret is the trades. When you and I were kids, if you weren't going to college, you were either going into the trades, going into civil service, cops, firemen, public works, or going in the army, you know what I mean? Or going to jail. And
right.
But nowadays,
both, but
we basically have to have to try to re-educate the young people, you hit the nail on the head. Earn as you learn, man. And our education is free. Our 4-year apprenticeship is worth about $50,000, $60,000, but it's free, man. All you got to do is show up and have your boots tied, be on time, and learn and be productive and be a professional. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, you know, we're a 5-minute walk from the end of the Broad Street subway line. So, you know, a lot of the kids that live in the city that don't drive, don't have driver's licenses, don't have cars. We have the CARP program that's specific for any individual that wants to come in that has little or no experience. They can do a 10-week crash course, 10 Saturdays. And if they do that and complete it and pass with a passing grade, they get accepted into our apprenticeship program. And so that opens up opportunities for those individuals that might have to take a bus and then catch the subway and walk to school. And, you know, but it just opens up so many opportunities for young people to consider coming into the trades. And the bottom line is the industry, the contractors, and the unions, we need the people. We're going to need the people. And we have to, you know, plant a seed now to grow a tree with regards to all that stuff. So I think this is just the perfect moment in time to actually have this whole thing come together.
And Bill, we talk about unions, being in a union and not being in a union. We call it the difference between a job and a career. Okay. Our apprenticeships are, you know, we talk about, earn while you learn and the opportunity. The teachers are the members. Okay. And all those great things. But let's talk about, you are the importance of training the next generation of carpenters, because that is what you're doing. Okay. The apprentice schools, like we talked about, are lifeblood of the union community. It gives us an unlimited, quality workforce. If somebody gets sick on a job, the union hall can send somebody just as qualified. Okay, let's talk about this education now.
Well, absolutely. You know, when you think about, you mentioned the non-union folks out there working in construction, you know, listen, they're just like any of us. They're just like any of our members. You know, we all started out doing work non-union before we got into a trade union, anybody who's ever gotten in there. And when you think about how the earning potential for a non-union carpenter or a non-union ironworker, electrician, or going right on down the line, sheet metal, you name the trades, you're talking 30 to 35% less in pay and benefits, right? And then, you know, the other thing that's happening out there, unfortunately, in the construction industry is, and it used to be isolated to residential. And I started out as a residential roofer. I worked down the shore. You know, I got out of Delco and went down, and I did fancy homes in Longport, Margate, Ventnor, Ocean City, Slate, Spanish tile, all that kind of stuff, working hand in hand with the tin knockers on all the copper. You know, and these are like millionaire houses and stuff like that. But it was all union back then, man, you know, for Local 30. And the Carpenters had a residential framing local that was very strong back then. Unfortunately, the industry has gone to like this piecework model with these subcontractors, and they exploit a workforce that's out there. And when I say piecework, like if it's per lineal foot or square foot, I mean, whether it's drywall or wood framing or even a brick mason, you name it, the money that some of them subcontractors are getting paid by some of the developers and some of the unscrupulous GCs and the pyramid scheme that's going on, like $3 a foot for wood framing, you know, that's the same that a crew got in 1979 that was doing wood framing, right? $5 a sheet to hang drywall or to tape drywall, right? They're the same numbers from the early 80s. And what's happening in the industry is all that badness that kind of inundated the residential sector because you can't monitor it. You know, they're not paying local. state and federal taxes. It's all cash deals pretty much now. That has trickled into the multi-million-dollar commercial construction industry. And that's our cancer rate now. And that's something that if anybody from state government, or the United States Department of Labor, or, our tax money as middle-class tradespeople pays for all this stuff that goes on around us. Same thing with anybody who works for the city or the policeman or the fireman. The middle class supports our country, supports our government, and supports our infrastructure. And the fact that we're letting, 20, 30, 40, $50 million jobs, even jobs that are valued more than that, fall victim to those unscrupulous practices where workers are exploited. There's no apprentices, there's no safety standards, and it's all cash deals that are going on at the bottom level where the workers are. We need to organize those workers and bring them into the union, because you know what? Once we control most of the workforce, those bad actors, whether it's a greedy developer that's worried about a couple of extra percentage points on investments, or whether it's subcontractors that got their hand in the cookie jar because they're subbing out to some low budget crew. I mean, they're not doing anything to help costs that working middle class people do. And I know I'm kind of grandstanding a little bit, but something's got to give here, man, because it is a problem. And, they want our people to work the same way they do. Tradesmen in the South don't get paid jack. A really good carpenter in the Carolinas, right on down to Florida or Texas, that's non-union, might be making, $20 an hour.
Well, and the thing is, my dad always used to say, the same thing. He'd say at the time, not everybody can get, or can get in a union. They got to feed their families. And sometimes he said, we want to organize them and all that, but I'm not running around beating up on non-union people that can't get in a union. The contractors that are taking advantage of them. And you look at, and that's why we say, Bill, that being in a union is the difference between a job and a career. You have no options, okay, if you are not represented, if you don't have the protections that a union has, if you don't have your union card means that, and the way we would do it, I don't know exactly how the carpenters do it, but you either work out of the hall or work steady for a company. If you work steady for a company, you might be with that company for 40 years. You work out of a hall, you may work on, 15 jobs a year, but you can always go down to the union hall and you're protected. You get the representations. You also have obviously you have your rates and all that stuff that are set for you. So you don't ever have to worry about being lowballed or taken advantage. You don't have to worry about safety or health. You have a career and you're part of a brother and sisterhood. Okay. And so the benefits, okay, what that building that you're building, that you just purchased and that you're, building out and putting the apprentice program, that represents that, what it means to be in a union, and one of the issues you're going to have is young people are going to get in there and they're going to think right away they were born on third base. I'm being sarcastic when I say that, but the point is that the blood, sweat, and tears that you guys are putting in are going to benefit so many young people, communities, and families, but also contractors and the future of labor. And so we only have a couple minutes left. And I want to touch on this because this is the Labor and Energy Show. And, we talked about AI and how you guys are preparing for the data centers. They had that big event at Carnegie Mellon last year and about the data centers coming in. And obviously the Carpenters are going to be at the forefront there. So, and as it relates to the apprentice schools, and the education and retraining journeymen. We only have a couple minutes, but just touch on that, Bill.
Absolutely, JDoc. We actually have a project going on right now in Fairless Hills, Bucks County. It's AWS, and it is a data center. It's going to be 4 250,000 square foot buildings, right? There's currently 200 carpenters working up there as we speak. And I'll tell you what, that project is a godsend, because last year this time we had about 25 tower cranes in the city. And if you notice, there might be 10 now, and there's a couple more getting ready to break. But, it's so these data centers are not only creating a lot of hours for carpenters and other trades, but they also have to have the power generation. So we've been, as I told you on the show, I think a few months ago, we're tracking that stuff throughout our whole 6-state footprint. I'm actually going to be doing a presentation in 2 months at our international quarterly meetings, because we have a database that can track every data center in the country. But when you look at the billions of dollars that are going to be spent on the data centers, as well as the gigawatts of power that are going to have to be built as far as power generation for this AI over the next 10 to 20 years, I mean, it is mind-blowing. I think one of the biggest hurdles is, the states and the utility companies are going to have to figure out how the data centers are going to pay for some of these power plants, because we know how expensive they are to build, and there's definitely a way. And, I know this is something that the governor's focusing on here in Pennsylvania, and other governors are looking at it, but it is a wonderful opportunity for young men and women that are getting into construction. That's going to be just like when we used to get excited about maybe building a big mall somewhere, and you go on a job and, hey, you're going to be there for a year because you're going to build this mall, and then there's going to be 125 stores in it. Look at what happened to retail. I mean, when I was coming up, casinos, hotels, retail, entertainment, that was just as big as eds and meds. Now, thank God we still have eds and meds and biotech and all that kind of stuff. But this is, data centers and power plants is going to be what drives union construction for the next 20 to 30 years.
Bill Sproule, Executive Secretary Treasurer, EAS Carpenters. Thank you so much, Bill.
Take care, JDoc.
Just about less than a minute, JDoc, before we say goodbye. There were so many good references in that conversation with Bill Sproule. A huge thanks to Bill Sproule for coming on board.
Absolutely.
Every dollar spent, I'm quoting Bill Sproule in this statement to you, and then I'll give you last word. Every dollar spent, the investment return is 8 to 10 to 1. So when you say legacy, and when you listen to what Bill is creating, it is just absolutely incredible. I'm glad he joined us today.
Oh yeah, and Bill gives credit to he's got a great team there, and but when you talk about great leadership and visionary and what's taking labor into the next generation, we just saw it. Bill Sproule and
by the way,
EAS Carpenters, just incredible.
Were you trying to get yourself a parking spot for the Eagles game?
I have no comment. That's
going to do it.
It never entered my mind. It has got perfect proximity to the to all the ball games and stuff. But I can tell you this: I'm so happy for him. I can and the leadership and vision, and the work ethic that is happening at EAS Carpenters to make this happen. It's just proud. You also talked about the workforce for AI and new technologies. They're prepping for it all, along with all of our labor community. That's why we have the top labor community in the country. And all of our labor leadership is looking to the future. If you're not moving, you're losing, brother. And I want to congratulate Bill and all of the Carpenters union for doing this, because it's a great thing.
Well, as we end the broadcast today, I leave this broadcast more energized than when I started the broadcast, just listening to the conversation with Bill Sproule, our special guest for the full hour today on the Labor and Energy Show. And like you, JDoc, I look forward to joining you and being there for the ribbon cutting and the grand opening. What a day we'll keep you out of the cafeteria down there as well. That's going to do it for this edition of the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Special thanks to our very special guest today, Bill Sproule. See you next time, everyone.